Hey guys, Alex here. And a few days ago, I had the pleasure of watching the 2014 Universal movie Dracula Untold, starring Luke Evans as the main character Vlad Dracula. And you guys all know who Dracula is. He is the most famous vampire of all time, written by Bram Stoker, based on the 15th century Wallachian ruler Vlad Dracula, or as he later became known as Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler. But anyways, this movie, as I said, starring Luke Evans as Dracula. He was also in The Hobbit. But yeah, this character, this is more of an origin story. This talks more about Dracula as he becomes immortal. So this takes place around the 15th century AD in the Principality of Wallachia, and that's located in today's Romania. Today, he's actually considered a hero by Romanians and other people. He defended Wallachia from the Ottoman Turks, and so he's revered as a hero to some and a monster to others. Certainly, if you read the Bram Stoker stories about him, then you're gonna know. I mean, you're gonna think that he's a monster of epic proportions. But anyways, I watched this movie on Thursday, October 9, 2014. The movie officially came out October 10, though, on Friday. But I like to do things before they officially come out, yeah. So, I watched this movie on Thursday. There weren't too many people at the theater when I got there, which kind of pleases me because I don't like going to a theater to watch a movie that I really want to watch, and I just want to focus on the movie. I don't want to focus on the person sneezing next to me or the person behind me kicking my chair. I don't like that kind of thing. I mean, it's all part of the movie experience, so it could be good or bad depending on how you look at it. But for a movie like this, I wanted to concentrate and focus on the story. So, yeah, as I said, this movie takes place in the 15th century AD in Wallachia. And there's some pretty good backstory, because as you guys know, Dracula is, he's based on an actual person in history, of Vlad Dracula. And he's actually Vlad the Third. His father was Vlad the Second. So I was actually pretty impressed with some of the back history that they threw in about the main character Dracula, because in the first few minutes they talk about him as a kid growing up as a political prisoner of the Ottomans. They talked about his relationship with the Ottomans and even Mehmed II, but they didn't talk at all throughout the entire movie about his relationships with Hungary and Hunyadi. He was just as important, historically speaking, with the story of Dracula as the Ottoman Turks. But because it's a movie and it's more of a merging of history with horror, I was ready to overlook that fact. You don't have to go into that much historical detail, but I just wanted to point it out, just for my own benefit. So yeah, this movie, it focuses on Dracula's involvement with the Ottomans, and they do talk about a lot of other cool things, such as when the Wallachians had to send 1,000 boys to join the Sultan's Janissary Corps, and they were an elite group that fought for the Ottomans, made up of Christians. So it's a pretty cool concept. But that's how this movie kind of kicks off. Dracula, because of his political imprisonment with the Turks, which isn't as bad as you might think. I mean, it could have been bad too, but because of his involvement, he kind of grew up despising the Ottomans. Although it's said that he developed a really close affinity with Mehmed II, who later came to power as the Ottoman Sultan. So yeah, the conflict in the story, it begins with how does it begin? Sorry, it begins with the Ottomans. They're scouting out this Wallachia, and at the beginning, Dracula says, "Wherever the Ottomans scout, they conquer." So it was only a matter of time before the Ottomans came back to harass the Wallachians, and Dracula knows only too well just the might of the Ottoman Empire, him being a political prisoner himself, and he even fought for the Ottomans as well. Yeah, just a little backstory. This takes place during I believe it's Vlad's second reign as the ruler of Wallachia. But I think his first time he only ruled for a short while. Then he was kicked out by the Hungarian. Oh my gosh, I'm not sure if that's accurate. I'll look it up later. Whatever. But later on, the Ottomans helped put him back onto the throne of Wallachia. So that's basically the setting of this story. It's Wallachia on the brink of coming to grips with the Ottomans. So towards the beginning, these guys run into this cave looking for these Ottoman scouts, and they discover this cave of this vampire, and of course, this case could be really important later on because Dracula, he's going to seek power, and to seek this power, he's going to go to this cave where this monster lives, and but you guys can pretty much guess what the story is about. Dracula, he comes to war with the Ottomans. And the Ottoman Empire is this massive. Wallachia is this really small kingdom, this small principality. So in order to frighten these guys out, he has to become a monster himself. And that means becoming the monster in that cave. And that's pretty much the plot of the story. And I want to talk about my opinion on the movie. Like, right off the bat... Get it, Vat? No, right off the bat, I do want to say I did like the movie, but I didn't like it as much as I wanted to like it. Like, I've been waiting for this movie for about a year, but I was pretty disappointed though, because I felt like the movie was kind of rushed. I felt like they needed to add an extra 30 minutes, maybe even an hour, because there were a lot of situations that the movie jumps to, and they don't explain how they got to that point. It just seems like they should have developed, like, even these characters more. Like, I think the character of Vlad Dracula was awesome. I think Luke Evans did a perfect job as Dracula. It's probably my favorite depiction of Dracula on screen on the silver screen. So yeah, Luke Evans did awesome. And but as I said, a lot of things felt rushed. Like, especially character development for the supporting cast, it was not happening for me. I did not care about who these other people were. I almost didn't care who his wife was, even though she's kind of centered to the story. She supports Dracula even when he becomes this monster. But as I said, yeah, the supporting cast, I wasn't really feeling it at all. I felt like they should have focused more on their intentions, how they got from one point to the other. You'll have to watch the movie to see what I'm talking about, but it just feels like things just happen without too much of an explanation. I did like the Mehmed II, the Sultan, but I still feel like even him, I think they needed a little bit more backstory. And just to give an example what I mean, like another example what I mean about how they rush to these points, a lot of the Ottomans, whenever they see Dracula, they keep like looking at Dracula and they go, "Hey, we know you're this really dark and evil guy. We know back in the day you were the Impaler," but they never really discussed his backstory there. I think they should have, shown some clips of him like actually impaling people, when he was fighting for the Ottomans, because they're just saying, "Hey, this guy, you're dark. We know your back history." Well, the audience didn't. You can't just say that and not go into depth about it. Because when they kept saying that he was this Impaler, this really dark spirit that's just waiting to come out, it's not believable for the audience, and I think we needed to make that connection. Another thing that the story kind of rushes to, Mehmed II, in his later encounters with Dracula, for some reason he's not at all freaked out when Dracula becomes a vampire. Like, he's not at all surprised or anything. It's just weird. It's like, how did Mehmed II go from knowing this guy almost as a brother to all of a sudden becoming accustomed to this guy being a vampire? Because the transformation was just way too fast, and Mehmed II just it's like they lived in a world of vampires, and it was the kind of thing that happens at that time, I guess. I just wasn't feeling it. And another huge problem for me. Well, let's just talk about all the problems here because we're already on the subject of problems. Another problem with me is the transformation. Dracula, when he becomes a vampire, he masters his powers in a matter of a minute, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It was just way too fast. If you ever watch Man of Steel, at least Clark Kent, he struggles with coming to grips with his powers. He doesn't just know everything like in an instant. He has to struggle through it. But Dracula, he just starts doing things, and that kind of bothered me. I think they should have made him. They should have added a lot more scenes where he went to the trouble of discovering his powers, not just know everything in an instance. It just felt kind of rushed to me. I think they really needed an extra hour for this. Now, my biggest problem with the movie, and if you haven't seen the beginning of my video, some major spoilers. My biggest problem with this movie was the very end scene, because they set up this time period of 15th century Wallachia, and at the very end, they take you to modern times, like the time that you and I live in. I understand why they did that. I understand that they're trying to set up a sequel, but I think we as the audience, we already know that Dracula lives forever, that he's immortal, so we know he's going to live to this time. But when you fast forward to the present time, after you spent like a whole hour and a half or so developing the 15th century, you totally ruin your own theme. You ruin your own history right there, because we don't want to be taken from the 15th century, taken to modern times. You kind of ruined your own movie there. I would say that was my biggest problem with the movie, is that part. Because I've seen a lot of movies that are set in historical times, and then just to wrap it up, they pick this really cliche ending where they show modern times and what this character has done since then. It's cheesy, it's overdone, it's cliche, and I think you really destroy your own universe when you do that. So I was disappointed with that. But back to the positives, I loved looking at the sets. I loved what Wallachia might have looked like. Luke Evans was perfect as Vlad Dracula. He was awesome. I liked the costumes. I liked the armor that the Ottomans were wearing, and most of all, I loved the dragon armor that Vlad Dracula wears at the end of the movie. I mean, not the very end where he's in modern times, but the very end battle. It's like red. There's like a little Dracula. I mean, like a little dragon thing circulating on his chest plate. It's freaking amazing. I know it's not historically accurate, but it's freaking awesome. Yeah, I love it when the costume designers, they make something really original, but they make it really memorable too. Even though it's not historically accurate, I think it's freaking awesome. It's kind of like what they did with Colin Farrell's Alexander costumes. Some of it was based on history, but his second armor set in the Battle of the Hydaspes was pretty original and pretty freaking fantastic. But that's how I felt about Dracula's his final battle costume, the dragon costume. It was pretty phenomenal. Fantastic. I can't even pronounce that word. So overall, I did like the movie. I just think it was extremely disappointing. I think they needed at least an hour, maybe even just 30 minutes. Just, flesh out the characters more. Go more into the exposition. Don't just jump from one thing to the other, because the audience needs to see how you got from point A to point B. You can't just jump to it without some kind of in-depth explanation. It's not like we don't get. I mean, we get it. We get the story. We're following the story. It's not complicated. It's just you need to define the story more. I mean, that's the point of a story, is to tell it, not just jump through it, because when you do that, you kind of jolt the audience. The action scenes were awesome in this movie. And the CGI, it might have been somewhat overdone, but I think it was acceptable. I'm not really huge into CGI when it's too overdone, but I think with a movie of this magnitude, you can't really avoid it, at least with today's technology. So I'd say the CGI is acceptable. The story seemed rushed. Costumes and sets and all that was pretty awesome. The acting from Luke Evans was perfect. The Sultan, I don't think he had much material to work with, but I think what limited time he had, he was pretty good in his role too. So I recommend the movie. It's a fantastic merging of history with horror, but I think it could have been a little bit better. I totally recommend this movie, though. And leave your thoughts on this movie. And somebody was asking me if Dracula was depicted as a hero in this movie. I'm gonna have to say he was depicted as an anti-hero. As I said, he did what he had to do to save his kingdom, but in that instance, being the hero here was becoming a monster, and that's what they keep saying over and over. He was a monster in this movie, but a heroic monster, I suppose. Anyways, leave your opinions about the movie, especially the costume. Did you like the freaking dragon costume? I thought it was freaking awesome. And yeah, talk about what the things you want to talk about this movie. And I think this movie Dracula Untold, it's gonna like kick off all the other Universal classic monster movies like Frankenstein, Mummy, Wolfman. I'm not sure what the plans were, but it's supposedly it's gonna. This is the start of a reboot of all those monster movies. I think. Don't quote me on that. I'll let you guys look that up. But that might help explain the ending. But for me, that ending did not work. Like, if you make a historical movie, don't put us back in the present time. I hate it. But recommend the movie.